So if you're the Jaguars, um, and they took your approach, what do you think they're going to do in the draft?
Uh,
Or who do you think they
this
might
year,
go after if you have an idea?
definitely this year in the draft, we need to get younger on at the defensive line. We brought in Chris Clemens last year. He did a decent job at the Leo position, getting 8.5 sacks, but he's 34 years old. We need to get a young pass rusher to fit Gus Bradley's scheme, and I definitely think the kid out of the USC, Leonard Williams, he can play the Michael Bennett role, how he goes inside and outside in Seattle, or Randy Gregory from Nebraska, who could fill that Leo position for the future and get a consistent pass rush, because Jacksonville did finish in the top 5 in sacks this past year, but QB pressures were some of the worst in the league, and if you can't get consistent pressure on the quarterback, this defense will never work. As you can see in Seattle, that secondary is amazing, but if they don't have that pass rush consistently, the secondary is not going to be as good.
Do you think they might? What do you think? They address their running back situation through the draft, free agency? Do you think they do nothing?
I hope they address it in the draft. You know, Denard Robinson, he did some nice things for a couple of weeks, but it's still, you got to have a consistent workhorse for this offense. We just hired Greg Roman as a offensive coordinator, and he's had some success with some running backs in his career, but I think that we're going to have to go mid-round running back. This running back class is really deep. I really like Duke Johnson out of Miami. I feel like he would be a perfect back for the zone blocking scheme that we're hopefully going to be running still. Somewhere in the third, fourth round, if we can get a running back, let him grow, and have Denard as a scat back, I think that would be the best thing for the future.
Ahmad, who's your Super Bowl pick, man? Look into the crystal ball. Tell me who you think the listeners should, either put on their Patriots hat or their Seahawks hat. Which one you wearing?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fantastic game, first of all, but I'm going to go with the Patriots. The thing that people are overlooking, I feel like, is how good this Patriots defense actually is matching up versus the Seattle offense. You have two corners, actually three, with how well Kyle Arrington's been playing in the nickel, that with Revis and Browner, they can shut down the receivers of Seattle and Baldwin and Curse. But the main thing I think that New England needs to do to win this game is make Russell Wilson stay in the pocket with Nikovic and Chandler Jones on the outside, and I think an up-and-coming star with Jamie Collins playing the linebacker position. I think that their defense would be able to shut down the passing game of Seattle. And as long as you can control, I think Marshawn's going to definitely get his, but I think the passing defense of New England is going to be the difference in this game.
So who would your MVP be then?
The MVP actually is, for me, is going to be Gronkowski. I think the New England offense is going to try to get the run game going. That's going to bring Chancellor up in the box a little bit more, cheating hopefully. And I think Gronk is going to be able to do some terror in that game. This is a Gronk-type game, and I feel like he'll be the Super Bowl MVP.
All right. Ahmad, thank you so much for your time. We're going to get you back on the show, and we'll have more time to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tell the listeners out there how they can connect with you on social media.
You can connect with me at Stiggy Maine. It's StiggymAynee on Twitter. And, and on Facebook.
All right. Ahmad Halawi, everybody. Thanks again, Ahmad.
Thank you.
Wow, talk about the peanut gallery. Did you go with your children to school and just walk around with the recorder?
No, those sound effects are provided by the lovely people at Spreaker.
Oh, there we
go. Keith's not allowed at elementary schools anymore, so.
No.
Oh, Joe,
We don't talk. We don't talk about that. We don't
No.
talk about that.
My poor kids have to walk 50 feet.
That was
Yeah.
crossing the line, Steve.
Listen,
was
it's
crossing the
It
line.
would
ice
be.
cream trucks and clown costumes. I don't want to get involved.
It would be if it wasn't true.
Jeez. All right.
It's just
all
about
right.
that action, boss.
It is about that action, boss. All right. Last but not least, or almost last but not least, we've got North Carolina's very own Corey Spires, who covers the Carolina Panthers for the FantasyGreek.com. Corey, what's up, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I've been looking so forward to connecting with you. Certainly, at some point, I have an affinity for the Panthers, and don't ask me why. Maybe it's because Greg Olson went there from Chicago. Maybe it's because my wife and I have visited, and it's a beautiful town out there. But here, Corey, the Panthers, they've salvaged their season, and they made it to the playoffs. Do they seem to be close to being a dominant team again? Because most of this past season, they didn't look like it.
Yeah, Jim, they definitely look like two different teams from the first half of the season to the second half. I don't know what specifically to attribute that to, but
real quick, Corey, you know what I mean? Last year, they were the bomb, and then this year suddenly they implode.
Yes. I mean, it's a combination of things. They started off the year with uncertainty with Cam Newton with a couple injuries. He had an ankle problem. He had a rib problem. Luckily, Derek Anderson got him off on the right foot with a Week 1 win. But I don't know. I don't think Cam ever really settled in. He also had that scary car incident where he was injured, had the same injury that Tony Romo suffered in his back. So, I mean, it was an up-and-down season for Cam, and I think as Cam goes, so do the Panthers. But they figured out a lot of stuff as the season went on. A lot of pleasant surprises in that defense specifically. You talk about guys like Antoine Cason and Thomas DeCoux that started the year. I mean, those are guys that were relegated to pretty much not playing at all later in the year, and in their place were pleasant discoveries like Bené Benwickery, who was an excellent find, Trey Boston from North Carolina. I mean, these are guys that are excellent finds, and Josh Norman at cornerback. If you haven't had a chance to see some of his interceptions, take a look at him because he's a real special player at corner. So, I mean, through the rubble that was a rough year, the Panthers found a lot of bright spots. But, yeah, I think that they're on the rise to hopefully more prominence. They surged late in the year, and they had a couple games where they looked like shells of themselves from the 12-4 year. But, yeah, definitely, I think that they're a team on the rise. And to even rally and win the division like they did was just absolutely impressive. So I'm optimistic about our future, yeah, for sure.
So, quickly, do you think Jonathan Stewart remains the lead running back next season?
I think he does, and he was one of the NFL's best stories there late in the year. I mean, last 4 or 5 weeks, there were a few backs that were better than him in the entire league. And what's interesting is D'Angelo Williams. I mean, you talk about a guy that's getting paid more than Jonathan Stewart to, practically take no carries. I mean, he was injured late in the year, but he was practically relegated to, 3 to 5 carry guy, and, you're not going to pay him for that. So don't be surprised if D'Angelo actually doesn't come back in the Panther uniform next year. We'll see what they choose to do with him in the offseason, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him go.
Yeah, he's a player definitely that's sort of on the minds of people if they can recall him from, the beginning of his career. He's just been such a staple there for the Panthers, but yet the end seems like it's here.
Yep, it's tough to imagine because he's been such a staple guy. He's a great guy in the locker room, and but especially with the emergence of Fozzie Whitaker, who was a real pleasant surprise, I don't see room for him anymore, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, Fozzie came on there right at the end, and that was good to see. All right, so Super Bowl, what do you think?
I've been thinking about it all week, and it's going to be a great game, and it's a tough game to pick. But I got to go Patriots, and I've said this before, based solely on the experience that Brady and Belichick got together. I stand by that they're the best QB coach combination in the league, and I think that their experience makes a difference here. I think the Seahawks are a great team, and they certainly showed my Panthers what was up on the road. But it's going to be a fantastic clash. But I think Tom Brady, who I think is nearing the end of his career, goes out with an MVP award here in the Super Bowl, and he gets the 24-21 victory over the Seahawks. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. But I think that the Patriots find a way to solve that Seahawks secondary, particularly with their injury questions going into the game. I think Julian Edelman becomes a difference maker, and you can't count out Rob Gronkowski. So I think that Brady wins the MVP, and the Patriots send Brady off into the sunset with one last Super Bowl.
That's interesting that you mentioned Julian Edelman, because for the most part, the MVP that people have mentioned is some player that, Julian Edelman's not the guy whose name jumps out at the top when you think about the Patriots.
Sure.
And, I would say at this point that to hear you mention Julian Edelman is a good reminder that many times MVP is just somebody nobody is expecting to be MVP. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, Corey, thanks again for joining us for tonight. Got you in right here at the last minute, and I'm looking forward to having you on the show again to talk some Panthers.
Sounds good to me, Jim. Thanks.
And how do we connect with you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Corey, Cory, last name Spires, Stiers. That's at Corey Spires, Cory, Stiers on Twitter. So follow me up and tweet at me any Stanford questions you have. I'm always following the team, so just let me know if you got any questions.
All right, Corey, we'll catch you, buddy.
All right, thanks so much, Jim.
All right, I see we got Ben Franklin, our last guy. Ben, how are you?
I'm doing good, Jim. How are you?
Awesome, man, awesome. For the listeners out there, it's Ben Franklin. He covers the Dallas Cowboys on the FantasyGreek.com. If you are a Cowboys fan, you need to be following this man. It's at BB Franklin. Is it 4?
Yes, the number 4.
All right, BB Franklin 4 on Twitter. Ben, talk to me about the Super Bowl, man. Who you liking?
Man, I like the Seahawks. I mean, I don't know if it's because the Texas Rangers drafted Russell Wilson or if it's because they got the repeat mentality, but something about them just screams, we want another, and we're not going to let you take it from us.
You know what? That's cool. My pick is the Seahawks as well. I see it being sort of a defensive battle. So you like Russell Wilson in this game? Are you picking him for the MVP?
Usually it does go to the quarterback. I think that if Marshawn Lynch has an incredible game again, he's a very good candidate for it, but I see this game as going to Russell Wilson. I mean, obviously beast mode's going to turn it on. He's going to do his thing, but if Russell Wilson can scramble for another 100 yards, he's going to do that. And I see if he tops 60 yards, he'll be the MVP for sure. Because they don't really have any star wide receivers. I mean, Curse came on at the end. He was pretty good. But none of their receivers are really stand out. And so if he has to do it, Wilson will put the game on his back, and he's done it before.
Okay. I know we've got an article to look forward to from you that I'm working on. It'll be your analysis of the whole Des Bryant and DeMarco Murray choice that the Cowboys are going to have to make, and I'm sure you, like every other Cowboy fan, would love to keep them both, but we know that may not happen.
Right.
So, Ben, thanks for joining us this evening, and we'll talk again real soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Anytime.
Absolutely. Good night, man.
You too.
So, Keith.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
What happened to you, Steve? I thought we lost you for a second.
Oh no, I'm here. I'm not. I know we're on a tight schedule, so I'm trying to keep my mouth shut.
There you go.
We're not only on a tight schedule, but according to our producer, Mr. Grieve, we're under 2 minutes. So, as we're wrapping this up, I got to ask you guys. Got to tell the listeners who you're picking and why.
Steve, will go first.
Seattle Seahawks, mainly because I just think they're the better team. I think they're younger. I think they have more speed, more talent. And I think Russell Wilson is going to solidify his legacy and only his 3rd season by winning the MVP this year in his 2nd Super Bowl victory.
Keith.
I'm picking the Seattle Seahawks. The Patriots, like we talked about on a Monday night show, they did not rate well. Pass blocking wise, the Seahawks can rush 4. Brady doesn't need a lot of time in the pocket because a lot of his throws are in the intermediate and short crossing patterns over the middle, but Seattle's defense is good enough to take care of that. That will put all the pressure on Tom Brady, and they have only allowed 17 passing touchdowns all season long. That is it. That is the 2nd lowest. Only the Buffalo Bills, surprisingly enough, were less than that. It's going to be a defensive struggle. I'm picking the Seahawks, and I'm picking my man, Marshawn Lynch.
I've been rocking this beast mode thing kind of hard
to take the MVP.
That's great. Well, I'm taking the Seahawks too, and for all the listeners out there, this is the FantasyGreek.com's NFL Football Power Hour. I'm Jim Sarantias of the FantasyGreek.com, your host. For Keith Grieve and Robin Extraordinary, Steve Taylor, good night. Good night. Good night.
40.